All right, we're live. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Empower Events, Tampa Bay. We're doing a Tuesday talk, and today is a really important one all about the wedding day timeline. We've got a bunch of different vendors. We've got florals, we've got catering, planning, video, and beauty, and then photography. And so we're going to talk about, how important the wedding day timeline is, how it affects all of your vendors, what to think about, when to start thinking about stuff, because the timeline is just so crucial. That is your day. Your wedding day is only so many hours, and this whole team of vendors that you've put together are working hard to make everything happen. So I know for me, it's all about being realistic and making sure that it aligns with your priorities so that we can really be set up for success. So I'm going to go around and let everyone introduce themselves. We'll start over here with Zoe from Botanica. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Zoe from Botanica. We do floral and decor, and then we also have our sister company, which is Style House, which is furniture rentals.
Awesome. And then Shotzi.
Hi, I'm Shotzi with Shotzi C Beauty and Shotzi C Bridal, and I specialize in beauty, hair, and makeup for brides, as well as just the everyday women.
Awesome. And Kamari.
Hi, my name is Kamari. I'm with Kamari Films. I'm a wedding videographer here in Florida, and we kind of specialize in story-driven and intimate wedding films that really for the joyful and happy couple, and our style is pretty light and vibrant and airy.
Yay. All right, Anna, take it away.
Hi, I'm Anna with Anna Lucia Events. I'm a wedding planner, event planner. We do social corporate weddings as well, obviously. And so I'm just here to give my perspective on my side of actually developing the timeline and working with you all to make sure everything runs smoothly. So
awesome. And then Carla, welcome.
Hi, I'm Carla Rubin. Yep, I'm Carla Rubin from Creative Edge Parties. We're based in South Florida and New York City, and have been doing tons of events in your area in Tampa, and we're a full service catering company.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. All right, so I am going to actually kick it over to Shotzi. We were kind of chatting before the stream started about where to start, and really beauty is where the day starts. This is the key to everything. This is like where the pyramid, the dominoes can be stacked right or they can go wrong. So Shotzi, what is your perspective on creating the best, most stress-free, successful timeline?
So as you stated, beauty is where the day begins on the wedding day, but it can also be kind of tricky because I know sometimes beauty is like the last thing that brides think about. And I like to encourage brides to start looking for their hairstylist if they don't have one, and makeup artists the same time they start looking for like their wedding planner or videographer, just because some dates may not be available and you want to be certain that this person actually can execute the look that you want on your wedding day, and you'll get a better idea of time. So once you book that person and you have that person like in your back pocket and you know that's who you're working with, trials are very important, not just because you get to see what your look will be like, but it also gives the stylist an idea of how much time they need to allot for your service. I personally like to overcompensate. So if I know something will take, let's say, an hour and a half, I like to give myself like an hour and 45 minutes because I want to keep a 15-minute window just in case anything happens. Because I also understand that if I run late, then everything else runs late. And so I don't need anybody mad at the hairstylist.
Exactly. Yeah. Then we're fighting against, the sunset, That's something I always tell my couples. I actually include hair and makeup within your engagement session when you book your wedding with me, because I want to pamper you. And also I want you to understand the difference that professional hair and makeup styling makes, and also the time it takes, and get you thinking about that right now. Because yes, like it's going to take you 2 hours to get ready. And if you're on a razor's edge on when everything else needs to be done, like it's just not going to work. You got to really think about giving yourself that cushion time and being really confident in knowing what you're walking into. Like if you haven't done your trial before your wedding, like that's a huge question mark on how you're going to like it. I always say to go in the middle too, so that you're not the first person being styled, but you're also not the last. So you can kind of sit with it and add or change anything. You don't want to be rushed being the last person, and you don't want to be sitting there completely done the whole time while everyone else is getting ready either. And then do you work with the other stylists too? Because sometimes you have like 12 women that are getting ready all within like a 4-hour window, you know?
Yep. So I do work with other stylists. So if I do need that additional assistance, I do have someone that I'll contract to come along with me. And typically people will meet that person via like chat, like how we're doing now. They typically don't come in person on the trial or anything like that, but I like for them to at least know who the person is, so there aren't any random people just showing up on the wedding day. And just kind of get a feel for, you know, their personality. And so everyone is on the same page on that same day. And like you also mentioned, ensuring that the bride does have enough time to, you know, sit with the style or sit with the makeup and ensure that they do like it. I personally only schedule brides at the earlier part of my week, just because I know that that's the slower part of my week. So I'm able to allot a little more time if we do need to, you know, change something or, you know, alter something in any type of way, so we don't feel rushed. And again, it adds to like that pampering experience, because honestly, that's really what it's all about. You want to feel like you're being pampered, like you're being cared for, and like you really matter, you know, as a bride.
I love that. Yeah. Awesome. Anna, how do you like jump in and help your brides figure out that first step? You know, like when I have same-sex couples too, you know, like I've had guys like they bring their hairstylist and they, you know, they're still planning for grooming and everything also.
I think it's super important to plan, and we kind of work backwards. We start with what the wedding day, you know, the timeline on when the actual ceremony starts, and kind of work backwards from there. And the two people that we work with the most are photography, videography in some cases too, but mostly photography, and our hair and makeup artists and stylists and that team, because we need to kind of know when their actual day needs to start from the bride and groom point. So, and until we kind of have that, we can't really start developing the timeline with transportation and things like that as well. So it's usually one of the first things we start working on from the very beginning, just having those conversations. And we also suggest that they book them sooner than later, especially with hair and makeup, because some people will prolong it and just kind of be like, oh, we'll get to it. It's not a priority, but it actually is, because it does dictate the way.
Yeah.
Want to make sure everything's just running smoothly. And then and like to Shotzi's point too, we want to set them up for success and not for failure, and not giving them not enough time. So making sure that the bride and the groom, and in some cases too, grooms or whomever, know really what time they need to start getting ready, because we've had some, they're like, oh, we only need like 2 hours. And I'm like, no, you don't. You have 13 hours, and you're gonna have to start like 6 hours before to get everybody done. Or in some cases too, they also decide, you know what, we don't want to get ready that early, and we want to double up our hair and makeup team. So they add more stylists to it too, so they can get more done at one time versus, you know, starting earlier in the day. So I think it just helps set the tone for the whole day too, and nobody feels stressed if you know the timing on that end. And it just, and to Shotzi's point too, it makes them really comfortable with her and her team or whomever they're working with too, to just kind of say, I'm enjoying this day. I'm not stressed.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. And then photography, everything kind of builds into when we know that they need to be ready for you to kind of come in and start shooting details, getting ready shots and things like that too. And then the timeline just builds from there. So
Have you guys ever had anyone planning like a whole extravagant morning and then you have to break the news that that's like not going to happen?
Yes.
I had a bride that was like, I'm going to do yoga, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to get mani-pedis. And I'm like, no, you're doing that on Wednesday, and then on Saturday you're going to get up and put your butt in a makeup chair.
Oh yeah. No, we've had to break a lot of hearts on that.
Yeah.
We have one bride right now too, and we were going through her timeline, and they actually are doing a ceremony brunch, like a wedding ceremony and then a brunch. So the ceremony's at 11 a.m. and then they're breaking, and then they're actually doing a dinner too. So it's a full day of activities. But when I don't think she really thought of the setup time and the time, but they start getting ready at like 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Almost. And so when she said, we've actually, what I said earlier about doubling up the team, we've actually doubled up the hair so they could start at like 6 a.m. instead. Yeah. So it's like, it's an early morning, and it's a long day because it goes till 1 or 2 a.m. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a long day.
That is a really long day. We had a brunch wedding as well, and my call time was 5:30 to be there because it was like sunrise, and then the wedding was over at like, I don't know, 1 o'clock or something, because everything was so early. And I was like, oh, climbing's fun.
Oh my gosh.
it makes it interesting too, for sure. You bring in some different elements, and this is a marathon wedding, we keep calling it too, because then they do our break in between the ceremony, brunch, go back to the hotel, refresh, and then come for cocktails and dinner.
Take a nap.
Yeah, did they plan on that? Exactly. I think like people really underestimate how long things take, like just even transitioning from one thing to the next, portraits to introductions or whatever. It takes time. And if you're going to move locations, like if you're going to go from a church to your ballroom, like you're talking maybe 20 minutes or more just in corralling everyone, getting them on transportation, getting them over to the place, getting them out, and so I think like a lot of people think, oh, 5 minutes, oh, just a second. It's like, no, you need time.
Well, and I think that's the part too. It's like, you can control the time in regards to, you might have it written on paper, but controlling the guests and controlling the wedding party is a whole nother.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you can type it out in 5 minutes doesn't mean it's going to happen that way.
And it's always building in buffers and always having conversations with her. I mean, Carla knows this too, like the times that we've worked together, and just it's all about like making sure that they know we're saying this time, but let's plan. We've got a 15-minute buffer in there though too, so they can make sure food's hot and ready to go, and bars are open. So we always usually open the bars early too, just in case we're running, which usually doesn't always happen with running early, but there are cases where everything is on site and you need to be ready to go. But I think, it's a lot of teamwork in regards to building the timeline and really having these in-depth conversations too on what everybody needs to be successful to make it happen. So
I also feel like it's like a massive mathematical equation sometimes. And I feel like that's also where experience with your vendors really comes in, and how important it is, because especially, people like us where we sometimes have multiple weddings in a day, the timeline, can really dictate things for us, because not only are we managing the one event, but we have a couple others, especially with deliveries as well too. So it's like, we have to find out all the timing from people. And then from there, it's like, just this math problem, trying to figure out, okay, this crew needs to go here, and then they're going to switch and go here. So it's like, for us, the earlier we can get timing and stuff, the more it's appreciated, because we normally have like a big production meeting the Tuesday of the event week to sit down and figure that all out. So by Wednesday, we can email all of our people to say, okay, hey, this is your lead. This is the time they're going to get there. So the more notice we have, the better.
Yeah, I work on timelines in my consultation. When do you guys usually start bringing it up?
Right from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, we've learned the hard way too. It's like, you just like where we've waited, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, wait a second, like something got missed. So we really start working from the very beginning. It's almost like the first meeting with the bride and groom too, or grooms or brides or whatever. But I think it's really just looking at it from the beginning on what time they want that ceremony to start. And then again, it's always building backwards and just making sure everything kind of flows into it too. And then sometimes we realize we need more time, so the ceremony gets pushed back a little bit later, but it's having those conversations up front to kind of know what's going to work and what's not.
Yeah, I usually use sunset as a good time to work around, and we talk about what time their ceremony should be right away too, because if they get their invitations out and it says 6 o'clock, but the sun's down at 6 o'clock, you can't move, you can't fix it. By then it's too late, So I'm turning the wheels on all of that. Yeah, go for it, Carla.
No, timelines are like one of my hottest topics, to tell you the truth, because I'm the end of what all of you guys have started.
Right.
So all of this planning happens. So we have internally, our timeline meetings are kind of a combination, because you've got to ramp up the food to make sure it goes out on time, it arrives on time, and everybody arrives on time to have enough time to set up, and you're not being blocked by other trucks, etc. Right? So you've got to get in there, and there's a whole timeline conversation around that. But then once the party starts, I always say the timeline is actually kind of controlled by catering in a weird way. It's kind of catering and band.
Yeah.
Yes.
The thing is that, my love-hate with timelines is you have two types of planners. You have the planners that walk in and they literally read their timeline. You have the other ones that go off their timeline, but they don't tell the vendors. And then I get the third one that goes off the timeline and tells the vendors. So the conversation during the party around timelines is so dramatically important. I have had medium rare filet mignons ready to go out, very hot, 300 people, and the band decides to play another song.
Yeah.
Now cold filet mignon, and the caterer gets blamed, which is always my favorite thing. So timelines on site, in one way, they're incredibly important. In another way, I don't believe in them because so many times, the example I gave you, people are out dancing. They are having such a great time. The band is amazing. Why make them sit down? They finally got up. They're finally like having a great time. So where it boils down to is then the planner has to come and with a 15-minute, 20-minute warning go, no, everything's changed. And then you can adjust. But it's all about the communication when you get on site. That's the only success we're going to have is if the planners are, the planners are the most dangerous are, wait, stop, we're not going. Oh, wait, they changed their mind, go. Well, I can't go. So timelines on site are super key to caterers.
Yeah.
And I think you also have to be really flexible too. And a really good planner is able to adjust and have those communication where they're just constantly communicating with everybody.
Right.
But how we look at it though too, we have timelines because we have production timelines like the week leading up to like all deliveries, all these things to make sure everything's happening. But then on the day of when the actual thing is like the actual event's happening, the timeline is more of a guide at this point because you can't control what the bride and groom are going to do. You can't control what the guests are going to do. You can't control, you can't control the band, but the band go off on their own thing. And like Carla just said too, and that happens, but you just, but again, it's communicating and making sure you have like with meetings with them before the event even starts too, multiple times, but then even on site running through it again and just saying, I need to know if you guys, and yes, we'll adjust, but as long as the caterer kind of knows that the band might do that or, and just having those conversations, that might happen, but then also making sure they understand that if you go too long, it's going to screw up the food. And then the caterer is going to be the one that gets in trouble because they're the ones that always get blamed.
Exactly.
We're always once again. Another thing is one of the other things I love about timelines is when we're reviewing it, the client's timeline and our timeline. And I always find it fascinating because for some reason people think like, I've seen timelines where you could never do a 4-course meal in 45 minutes. Like there's this sort of like magical belief that if we need to save time because everybody wants to get up dancing, like we're going to just like squish in the catering and it just doesn't work that way. And so timelines and what Anna was saying is super important that it's really a collaboration and realistic. Not what you dream, not what you want to hear, don't let your vendors promise this for budget reasons. We can do this because
Absolutely
can't make it up.
No.
Conversations like this always just they overwhelm me in a great way, but I'm like, gosh, clients could just listen to this.
I know.
Yeah, right?
I mean,
it's such a puzzle piece.
Oh my gosh, they just don't even know. And that's fine, but it's just hearing all of the conversation. Oh my gosh, yeah, how do we do this?
It's magic.
Well, it's always a conversation because to Carla's point too, like everybody wants to have 4 courses out in 45 minutes. And I'm like, it's not realistic. Maybe 45 minutes per course, depending on your gut, that's what we're looking at. And so again, from the very beginning, that's why we start having these conversations too and saying like, all right, here's your time frame. We need to build in. And we ask how many do you want seated dinner versus plated dinner versus like a station or, reception style. And that also dictates the timing and kind of building around too. And, then you've got your toasts, your speeches, your first dances, the cake cut, all those other things too that you need to build in, which also dictate food service
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, having conversations, I think, with the clients from the very beginning and just being very realistic about it and just saying, like, this is not going to work. Like, the reality of what you want, this is how it's going to happen. And you just have to trust us because we've had experience doing this for a very long time.
Exactly.
Sometimes,
And I think,
sometimes
I think people really like being told like the truth, you know, like if this is what you want, this is what it'll take, and not sugarcoating it, because we don't want people to be on the day of frazzled and disappointed that something didn't happen because it wasn't humanly possible. If we set them up thinking that it was, you know, that's just it's not a good look.
no.
I think Anna's point, like, I like the idea. Maybe they should be called, you know, guidelines versus guidelines, because I really do. I believe that events have a life of their own. We can do all the predicting we want, but you actually really can never predict an event because absolutely, we all know anything can happen. A storm can come in, you know, somebody could trip and fall. Like, there's a million different things that can happen. And I think when you go in with the mindset that there's that kind of flexibility, I think it's a better event because it has its own personality, and then everybody's set up for success. I mean, probably one of the biggest weddings I've ever done in my entire career. We were like running to get all the food bars set up, and the planner or somebody from the planner team comes in and goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "They're coming in like 5 minutes." They're like, "No, they're not." They had redone the timeline, not given us the timeline. And we're putting out dinner, and it wasn't. So timelines, you know, they're tricky.
Yeah. Well, that's what you said. It's important for that communication too. And what you said about rain. We had a wedding last weekend, and it rained, but they still wanted to do it outside, so it pushed ceremony back 15 minutes. And I need for video. I have 3 cameras. I have to plug in. I have to mic people too. And nobody was out there. And I'm not going to set up my camera and get poured on. So I was like, I need at least a little bit of time too. As soon as I ended up just having to rush and do it because they didn't give me the time I needed. So anyway, but I got it. But then it ate into photo video time, and they still wanted us to be done on time. But that only left us with like 8 minutes. And we were like, no, we're going to need more time with the couple. It delayed, like the ceremony is 20 minutes late, which means we need a little more time too. And so then everything was rearranged, and it worked out because we, you know, all communicated that part. But that's, like you said, Carla and Anna, like that's just extremely important to, you know when something starts, but know that you can think on your feet and just switch it around when needed, just because you never know what could happen. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, I think there's one other point, which I don't know if it's even this is the form to talk about it, but Kamara is just like made me think of it, is timelines affect budgets, right?
Absolutely.
Because, you know, you run longer, you come earlier, maybe you were supposed to be filming it at this time, and everybody on your team was supposed to be leaving at this time, but it got moved back. Like, there's so much relationship to all of this. And so much of, I know on our part, timelines can come down to budget in terms of enough staff to make something happen. Sure, it's the same. It's the same actually probably for everybody, because makeup, if you need to be done in this amount of time, then you need to budget for more people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And I try to be very transparent about that, Carla, just letting people know that if you do have, let's say, over 6 people, then you're looking at an extended timeline, and you're going to want to bring more people, especially if you want to be done by a particular time. I want things to run timely. I always want things to run timely. However, it doesn't always happen that way, unfortunately. So I try to put little things even in the contract, like, hey, when we start the day, everyone who's supposed to be done within this window has to be in the room. Otherwise, you know, it's like they forfeit their spot. You know, because I don't ever want to be in a position where the wedding planner is coming to me like, okay, how much longer? Because we have to. It's always going to be me. Again, you know, it always falls on the vendor and not necessarily anything else, which is fine. You know, you take full responsibility because that's just what comes with the job. But you try to work as many, I guess, little cushions, if you will, in there. So that you don't have those problems, but they're almost inevitable. At some point, they're almost inevitable.
Shotzi, do you? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Zoe. No, go.
Do you? So we have stuff in our contract too, but nobody reads it. So
they probably are now.
By you saying that, yeah, they are finally, and paying attention to deadlines. By you saying that, it makes me think like maybe in our, there's so many like initial things that you talk about in that first meeting, but I'm like, maybe I need to have that conversation with them, or maybe even at their like final meeting, just to bring it to their attention because they don't read our contract.
Yeah.
Do you talk to them about that specifically?
Yeah,
or?
I do. And what I found, and I don't know if the rest of you experience this as well, but I feel like brides, grooms, whomever are very particular. Like they kind of scrutinize the contract of the people in beauty. It's like, okay, and how much is this going to be? And how, and why is this way or such on it? And, they ask for more explanation, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that. But what I tend to do is the initial meeting, which will be virtual. I typically do all meetings virtual the first time. We go over the contract. So it's more like a Q&A. Okay, here's the contract. Read it over. Before you sign it, we'll have this meeting. And you can ask me the questions that you need to ask me. So going into this, there's no discrepancy. You can't say you didn't know. You can't say I didn't tell you. You can't say that it wasn't there.
I like that.
That's
Yeah.
That's smart.
Go
We
ahead.
definitely learned the hard way through this whole COVID thing too, with and to Zoe's point that clients don't read contracts. I think also too, like this is the perfect example of like having to be flexible this year, right? Like COVID has made us have to figure out things and adjust and like just be flexible in regards to how we're moving forward. And I mean, we're still dealing with transferring and postponing. And, I think it's going to be going on for a while, even though there's a vaccine. Like, it's going to be a long time. It's going to be probably another year and a half. So we're minimally that we're back to maybe somewhat normalcy with events and things. But I think the big thing is just that we are really now going through every single vendor contract with each of the clients as like moving forward, new clients that we're working with right now, and just stating like, I want to make sure you understand, yes, we have the COVID language in there now, blah, 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 blah. But like, if you postpone or if you do, like, this is it's all those things too. And also understanding all the costs associated with it. And it's just the conversations where I didn't think we needed to have, but we realized we really needed to have when COVID happened, are now all part of our process too. And I think it's the planner's responsibility. If they hire you as a planner, it's your responsibility to guide them through that too, because a lot of them have no idea what to look for and they don't understand what the verbiage needs to be, to set everything up for success and understand that as well. So it's
what I find that's really challenging. I know this is slightly off topic, but when they want to change the contracts now, I find my clients are, have all the disposable income in the world. So for them to have their lawyer work on it for a couple of hours is one thing. For us to sign a contract and have to pay thousands of dollars to have somebody read a paragraph, that's become incredibly challenging because I think there's not been a single person that wants to sign exactly the way it is and renegotiate. So the reason those things are in my contract is because that's what my lawyer told me needs to be in the contract. So I don't know.
Carla, you know what I would do? I would put the feedback on them and say, I have no problem you rewriting my contract or wanting to change things, but at a cost of X per hour, I'm going to have my person look at it as well too. If it's happening so much, because that's a huge cost.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been having conversations. To Zoe's point, what you just said too, like I just said to clients, I'm like, you have to understand these vendors and our team, creative partners and things like that too. Like they spend a lot of money on these contracts. They've, you also have to be respectful of that though too. If you want certain COVID language in there, yes. And if they don't, and I feel like at this point, if we don't have proper COVID language in there, then shame on us. But I think it's again, educating the client and understanding that part of it too. And saying like, this is and I get it if you want, but at the end of the day, the companies and the vendors have to protect themselves. So you're going to have a contract that's going to be all one-sided to what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
And if that's the type of vendor you want to work with, let's move on because I'm not going to waste their time. And it's happened sometimes, but it's a waste of my time also, to be honest, because I spend so much time on having these conversations with our clients and where it just goes in circles and circles and nothing comes up. And then it turns in, and I like, so. I think that's the tone off on the wrong foot.
No, because actually,
Contracts.
when they don't sign the contracts, you can't get to work, so that slows up
Yep.
the timeline, right?
Yeah,
There
Exactly.
you go. Bringing it full circle.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because then you don't have their date. You know, the biggest clause is my second clause in my contract. It's called cooperation and consultation. It's saying like, look, like we have to talk these things through. You have to let me know if I'm not able to make a picture happen because someone wasn't there or they were late or decided they didn't want to do it. It's not my fault, you know, like it's on you. And I've had to do that before leaving a wedding years ago. It rained out, they were late, all this stuff. I was more than willing to go out in the rain and make night portraits, and they didn't want to. And so I was like, okay, this is the back of my camera. I literally have these 2 pictures of you guys together by yourself. That's it. That's all I have. I'm willing to go out. I'm willing to stay longer, whatever you need. They're like, no, we don't want it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to leave tonight. And tomorrow when you're really upset, you don't have pictures, like, this happened. You told me you didn't want to do it, you know, and if I can't force you. So that's like the biggest, meatiest part of my clause before all my clothing clauses. But it's like we have to have communication and consultation, cooperation. Like we've got to I can't make it happen if you're not willing, you know?
Well, with
Well-
that as well. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, we've literally put into our contract now, like a clause within our, kind of our, not in our terms and conditions, but in the proposal portion of it too. It's just like, it's like a transparency clause. It's like, you will see everything. We're going to have clear communication, but I just want to make sure they understand, but also it goes both ways.
Yes.
So I need to make sure you're being very fair with us in regards to everything, like budget number. I know it's an uncomfortable conversation, but it also dictates, to Carla's point too, because if we need to build in extra time into stuff, that's going to be more money because it's more labor.
Right.
As you explain that to them too, it helps, I guess, negate any issues moving forward. But I don't know. It's a lot of juggling.
Yeah, so much juggling.
Yeah.
Gloria, you had something to say?
Oh, I was just going to say about like when we were talking about how the timelines and the budgets and stuff like that, just we had a wedding where they had to a day of add on 2 full extra hours because some things happened with just a lot of things happened. But anyway, but it was not a hard conversation to have because like we were talking about, like Shotzi was saying, like I talk to them when they book, and then in our meetup, we do a virtual, like a video chat like this. And I tell them the possibility that might happen. Obviously I'm not going to stay if they don't want me to, but that they will be back charged for whatever additional hours. And so that kind of helps as well if they're like open about that and having that versus day of being like, yeah, so we're not going to shoot this unless you pay me. So, you know, like it definitely makes more sense if you have that relationship. So that's definitely helpful. And then on a separate note, I wanted to add too about I think Carla mentioned it, but getting in early with like the timeline, I always appreciate that as well. Most of the time, especially if you're working with a really good planner, they're aware, but like I need a good amount of time to set up ceremony and toast. So typically I can't switch from at the drop of a hat from formal dances to toast, like maybe a photographer can, because they just, you know, they can move freely. I need to readjust my lighting. I need to set up all of the audio again. And I usually have that ready to go, but I still need to make tweaks and switch lenses and things like that. So that's always important to know, as well as that I need time to set up all of that. And between cocktail hour and portraits and things like that, I need to, if I don't have time at the beginning of the day, I still need time to then set up lighting, audio, all the camera for all of those things. So I feel like that in addition is always important too, for people to hear that and know that I need that time specifically to do that. And usually DJ bands are really good about that they'll, if it wasn't in the thing, that they'll like play another song or something while I can do it. But typically it's nice to have that time.
Yeah.
I think this is more for Zoe and Carla though too, like the production, because we have our wedding day timeline, or like the event day timeline, right? That like dictates what the band is doing, like all the vendors and everything like that are actually executing the wedding. But then I don't think a lot of people realize too, we also have a production day, like timeline that's like, in some cases, like weeks leading up to the day.
We did know.
We're building up. But I think it's, I mean, and maybe Carla and Zoe kind of talk about that, because I know, Zoe, you've had issues with like when to deliver floral, but you can't get into a venue. But in some cases too, we need things there really early because we've got things that we're going to shoot. And the same for Carla too. It's like loading in your kitchen. And I mean, I think it's that part of it too that a lot of people don't see. And clients don't actually run the production timeline either sometimes because.
Yeah, and you know what? You're bringing up a very good point, which is kind of a sticking point for me, which is and it's an interesting one. Let's just say we're hired to start at 6 o'clock. Mm-hmm. But what happens is clients will say, but can you be room ready by 4:30? Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I have two choices, no or yes. If I say no, right, they absolutely panic. They don't think we'll be ready. Let me tighten it up, actually. Are you going to be room ready at 5 o'clock, right? 1 hour before. And I can say no. Well, what do you mean you're not going to be ready an hour before? Like, right? But the fact of the matter is our budget and our timing, one thing you guys were talking about padding, we've padded in that hour in case we're not just sitting there. So, when people say that, I'm like, sure, we can be ready an hour early or 2 hours early for room shots, but then we need to show up 2 hours early, which means we need to charge you more. And that's always been a really challenging thing because I'm sure we'll be ready. But if something goes wrong, and I've been doing this long enough to know, I'd rather have that but, because if I come to you and go, yeah, we're not ready. Yeah. We had this problem. We had no padding in there to fix the problem. Then I wouldn't be in business now. So it's a weird dance that we have because, and it's the same thing. Can you have some food and beverage ready, 3 hours early? No, we are unloading the trucks. We're setting up our kitchen. We're totally focused on the bigger picture, and that's a different delivery. So those types of things are super challenging sometimes in the conversation.
I think too, Carla, what you're going to have more than we do, but it's also not you showing up 2 hours early. Yeah. You and 20 plus people, so that's for us as well. If you've given us a time and you've said, okay, the tables and linens are going to be set at this time, and it's an hour late, it's not just me that I'm paying an hour late, I'm paying 6 other people. So it's just all those things really play into one another. And, we're kind of different where we can either just do floral and we're literally coming in and putting it on a table, or we'll be involved in the linens and all of that kind of stuff, which for us is nicer because then we have the control over it. If something's delayed, it's because we're in charge of that. Whereas, when we are just floral, we're reliant on the rental company bringing the tables on time, the person putting the linens on time, that it's hopefully going to perfectly align when people say it's going to. So it's tough. It's more work for us, but it's also... we go into the day with a little bit more ease, knowing we're in control. If they don't have a planner, and then you're really worried about it.
But you know what? That's a really good point, because it's so many times when we have a planner, actually our two teams don't tend to necessarily, we might be on a call, we might be on a walkthrough, but actually our two teams have to be so entrenched, and those timelines because you could reverse everything you say and be like, we show up, they said the tables were going to be we're standing around waiting. So that's an interesting conversation that maybe needs to be considered, that more connection between kind of design and catering, and that they come up with their own timeline and then sort of pass it on to the planner. That might be another interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good point too, because we do talk on our end, we talk with our floral team and design teams and decor teams and say how much time, we need to be ready. In their case too, we usually give them an hour before, 2 hours before, that we just want to have everything ready. Floral's a little bit different because you want it fresh, then they come down a little bit later. But for anything that's any hard good and stuff like that, we try to always be way ahead of schedule, just so catering can come in, set the tables, floral can come in, drop the floor, but it's but also too that they're not in each other's way. So we also kind of work in a sequence and try to do that as well. But I think it's a huge thing, and it's a lot of communication, and we've learned that as well through trial.
You know how many times we've shown up and the entire kitchen is full of the lighting company's boxes? Start because the lighting company's boxes are being stored there, and so those are the types of timeline things that become really challenging.
Well, and I think that goes back to the production timeline. It's knowing when, making sure you're staggering everybody to load in at different times, but knowing that they're not in the place. If you need to have that kitchen cleared, because when catering comes in, they need to be fully ready and have that to their space. So it's my responsibility, my team's responsibility to communicate that end with each of the vendors individually too. And I do think, and it's something we don't always have an opportunity to do because it's just hard to get, but we also have now moving forward too, like it's really important to do a production meeting with all your vendors. Everybody's on this. In this case now, Zoom makes it really easy because you can screen share and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, or do a conference call, just send out the timeline and you're going to go through it line by line and say, this is what we need to have done. And then that way too, a lot of questions come up between the vendors that maybe haven't been addressed on the timeline and go, oh shit, we didn't think about this. And then they'll talk offline, figure it out, come back to me. And then, so just,
you know what? There's one thing that I just thought of, which nobody ever talks about, is the party's over timeline.
Yes, the breakdown.
And I can't tell you how many times that's not thought through, and how many times, like I've been, we're breaking down and the lights turn off. I'm like, you can't break down with that else. Or you can't get your truck in, you can't get your truck out. Or, like, planners need to think really literally backwards, right? Because, and the thing that's not always super fair, which is we've got people on payroll right now. Like all of us that are loading out in the nighttime actually are now into hourly. So it's like every man for himself, like get out of here. I got my truck in there. I'm not moving my truck. And it's like you start arguing over trucks and light. And so I would sort of put it out there and beg planners to really manage the breakdown. Everybody's exhausted. Everybody, and it just tends to be a little bit of a shit show. So that could be something.
Keep the cooperation going.
It's really important to stagger, and we've learned that too again. And I think it's like, and usually the florist and the caterer are the two that need to break down first, because they've got to get stuff off the table so we can then pull linens, then we can do. But lighting, usually I just say, you know what, guys, you're going to be last. But it's and depending on the space too that you have, you also have to stagger trucks, and you have to stagger, and I get it, but it's then also if you're at the mercy of what time the venue, if you're at a venue that requires you to be out in a certain time frame, then you can still successfully stagger and make sure and just have a plan in place to know exactly how it needs to happen. So
but also somebody has to manage it.
Yes, no.
Manage it, because honestly, we're kind of left to fend for ourselves at that point. And it's just like, everybody's gone home that kind of paid us or hired us. We have a designated breakdown team. So we have a crew that kind of comes, they're there later in the day, but they're there at the end of the night. And then in the one gentleman, he kind of handles all the vendors. In our case,
that's great.
And it makes it, our team that has been working and killing themselves all day love it, because then they get the break, but then he's fresh and he knows exactly, and then he's on it. And
that's really good.
Again, it's budgeting, it's building in that expense and understanding how you're charging the client though too. So it all comes down to your production and your wedding and your event timeline. So
Anna, do you find a lot of people nowadays will make the call the day of about extending an hour? Do you have that happen often?
Sometimes our clients that we tend to, they kind of know, and we also look to at what the end time is with the venue or the location we're in. So if there's a noise ordinance in place or whatever, it kind of dictates that. But if we know, in some cases, yes, but then we give the vendors all a heads up saying there's a slight possibility that they may extend. We will let you know immediately. So, and I always tell the client too, I'm like, we kind of need to know earlier than just like an hour before you guys are going to extend, because otherwise everybody's in the back. Or just understand that you're going to get an additional invoice from all the vendors. It's additional time that they have to have their crew on to wait that extra hour until they can break down or whatever the time is. So, but we try to get ahead of it to where we know in advance what the end, and just knowing that they're not going to extend. And it's been successful, but we've been in that situation though too. And I'm very upfront and just like, all right, just plan on getting a charge from everybody, because they have to pay their staff an additional time now to break down, because we're an hour behind or 2 hours behind or whatever. But I think it's also, to your point, Zoe, like having that conversation with all the vendors to know what those fees are going to be. So if the client asks, you're prepared as the planner, just say, here's a list of, if you decide to extend, just plan on knowing that this is going to be the additional cost that you're going to incur. So we can either make the call now and build it in, or kind of just it's a day of call. So.
And it's also just helpful for catering to at least get a hint if it could happen. Because I always say, if we showed up with an hour's worth of, I'm making this up, extra glasses, or we showed up with an hour's worth of extra ice, that's just money that's that's putting profit in the garbage. On the flip side, if they decide to go an hour more and we are down to our last bottle of
ready.
you look like a failure in the end.
Yeah.
So
It's your problem again, Carla. The caterer ran out of alcohol.
but as much, and you can't always know, but you know which clients might do it. And it's always good to give everybody a heads up that they might do it.
Yeah. I love oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was like, Carla, when do you feed the vendors?
Oh my God. I was going to talk about that a few minutes ago. I was like, don't be negative, Nancy. Like, just don't do it. I'm going to talk to anybody and everybody that wants to hear. Let me just tell you something. And I want everybody to listen to me, okay? I love feeding vendors. I do not love feeding vendors when I need to be focusing on the main course getting out. And I don't want to feed vendors, when it's a critical moment. And that's always when they want to be fed. But you have to think about it. If I need to take people off the line to now focus to get your meal out. So that's where it's tricky. So I'm perfectly fine before the party starts or right after the main course is served, free reign. All good. The other thing is don't come into our kitchen and hang out. I don't need your hair. I don't need your I don't need any, we set up an area. We love to feed vendors because they're one of us. We feed our people really well. That's our philosophy, but work with us on the time. Band people.
Yeah, it's literally one of my pet peeves. And again, it's conversations up front with all your vendors and stating you are not going to be fed during the main, during the entree, salad, anytime the guests are eating, you are not going to be fed. So something that we just started automatically doing now, and then the client knows in advance, is the meal that we're going to set up for the vendors is more of a buffet style. So it's open for a 2-hour time period, and we'll do 2 shifts. So there's the beginning before the event even starts, which usually feeds the entertainment, the band, everybody, because they obviously can't break it all unless they're rotating or things. And then we'll do the back ends after dessert gets put down. Then the second 2-hour window or whatever opens up. And that's for all the vendors that have been working and can't take a break because there's too many things happening during the event. And that's been super successful on our end. It's, again, a little bit more of an extra cost on the client side, but it doesn't take away, and it doesn't stress the caterer out. It doesn't stress me out because I've got vendors going, where's my food? Where's my food? And that drives me bananas. That interrupts me when I'm trying to run a show with
and also you got to include all vendors. There's this weird thing, valet never gets included. And these poor guys are out there, and or security, and inevitably, we want to help them. We want to serve them. They need drinks. They need whatever. So just putting it for the
I like that idea, Anna, and I think it's important. I think to what Ashley was trying to get, it's just obviously, especially with photo and video, we can't. We can't stop. We can't do toast if they're supposed to during dinner, or we can't whatever. I mean, we can do that, but then with our food, a lot of the time, sometimes that happens is we have 5 minutes. Or there was a time where I went, they fed us, and then they were like, no, we got to go do this, and then they picked up all of our food and threw it away. And so we had 1 bite of food, and they're like, sorry, there's no leftovers. You can, here's a roll.
Photographers and video are always the nicest. They're so thankful. It's the bands.
I've heard that. Yes, I've seen. Well, I had a band also eat some of my team's food before too. So I was like, I love you guys, but why'd you do that?
That's also why we feed the band entertainment at the beginning, because
that's very smart.
They have wiped out all the food above and beyond what they were supposed to, and I'm just okay, so nobody else gets fed tonight.
And that's I'm totally fine as long as you have a pocket where we can as a videographer, and I'm assuming same with photo, as long as you know where a pocket we can eat is fine, just because we can't obviously eat while other things are happening. So I'm I'm totally fine. Just let me know.
I just want to make sure that it's going to happen, because, if they're eating, then nothing's happening. So then you're not doing anything, but then you can't eat yet. And then you can eat once they start doing stuff, and then you need to be out there. And so it's just a lot of unexperienced caterers, or, they're like, oh, well, you'll get fed after everyone or whatever. And it's well, that's never going to happen. We need to have an actual plan on when we're going to eat, so that, we can have 10 minutes.
I love the shift thing.
We
That's
actually,
really cool.
we always feed our staff before it starts. We have the captain meeting, we feed the staff. So at that time, it's always exactly again right before, and everybody's hungry and everybody's been there for hours. We get that. Everybody works better when they're fed. So we're not trying to starve. It's just in the middle of main course. It's always been
Yeah, and that's way too hectic. Totally, that's crazy. Yeah,
it's a lot. Awesome. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time. This has been really awesome. I think there's, like we said, like there's so many moving parts, and the more communication, the better. The earlier we have communication, the better. Is there any like last, things you want to drive home to any, couples out there that are going to be working on this in the next couple months or next year?
I have something.
Yes.
Remember that your beauty team is just as important as your photographer and videographer, because you can have an amazing team of photo and video, but if your hair and your makeup doesn't look great, it's a waste.
Absolutely. If you don't love the way you look, what are we doing? Like, why?
Well, and something we say, like, you're going to be spending your morning, like you're starting your wedding day with your hair and beauty team. Like you need to make sure that you like that.
That you're all excited about it
ahead of time to know exactly, so it sets them up for success and they know exactly what they're coming in to do for you. Because it does, we've had situations where it's like they hired the wrong beauty team and it just, everything crashed and burned, and it put them in a bad mood the entire day. We're in tears crying, and then the photographers then, and we're trying to fix, so shots be amen, because that's the
it's crucial. You're crucial.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
And I agree with your trial. Definitely have a trial.
I think my last key beg is to over communicate with the caterer and give them time warnings. If things change, things need to move, and don't flip flop around. Don't send your assistant to tell us one thing and then you come and change your mind and like get really clear on your communication, and then we're set up for success.
Well, and to Carla's point too, before you even start talking with your band and entertainment, have the conversation with your caterer to understand exactly how those courses go, and then you can build the timeline for entertainment from that too, because you need to know for timing, and then you can like build into in that regards to like how the run of show is going to actually happen, because you can't, it's all building backwards. It's having your key players first conversations and then building in everybody else on top of it. So
over communicating is extremely important. I was going to say, just for me, I always reach out to the photographer at least a week before and go over the final timeline, and I think that that's extremely important. So I love the idea of meeting with your whole vendor team, and then I think breaking off, and obviously it's more work for us, but breaking off into like who you're like directly working with a lot, like photo videos next to each other the entire time, and that's really important. And then like maybe what you said, Zoe and Carla, like the design and catering, maybe. I just think that that's really, really helpful, kind of a nugget. Obviously, if you don't want to do it, it's fine, but I think it's really important to over communicate is always better.
And that would also hold true, like we used to, but I guess we haven't in many years, but we used to have a meeting with the planner and the band leader and the captain of catering, and they would just all say, and for some reason we haven't been doing, like that used to be the norm. I think it disappeared, but I think that norm should come back, because there's people know,
Well, that's who's executing the event during the reception, so it's like, I think I agree with you, Cara. It's something we haven't been very good about diligently doing, but I totally, my team and I were kind of talking about it too, and just making sure everything, but it's important, because I think it's just, and knowing, again, going back to if anything's going to adjust, everybody's on the same page. And radios, give everybody
yes.
Like make sure your captain, your catering, everybody has a radio, so that and designate a channel so you guys can flip over to it and talk about any changes that are coming up immediately, because cell phones don't always work.
And I think too, it's us as vendors remembering that we all have the same goal. The goal is a happy couple and a happy client at the end of the day. And regardless of whether we admit this or not, like everybody is equally as important as one another. Like if we don't bring the tables, flowers can't go on them, linens can't go on, people just need to have that mindset more, sometimes every now and then you get that vendor that's just like, I'm the most important person, and it's, that's okay, but we just want to get our job done, so we can have
it's not okay.
So no, it's not.
We all need each other.
I'll still be nice to you. And
Because
just be
everything's
nice
equally
and be
important.
nice too. You know, like we've all had
Yeah.
those days where we're like stepping over draping poles and it's utter chaos. And then we've had the other days where we're like, this feels like a vacation. It's so smooth and everybody's happy. So it's like,
Yeah.
let's try to just have that common goal.
Yes.
Mhm. I like it.
It's all about teamwork and coming together, just and communication. I think everybody says that over and over again.
Super
But
key. Yeah.
and just
Absolutely.
remembering that we're all in this together, and that like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you want to have a happy client, and you really want the guest experience, because those are the ones that talk.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those are
And
your
don't blame everything on the caterer, right? I think that was the big takeaway I got. Or the hair and
Exactly. All right. So our next Tuesday talk is going to be on December 1st. So it's a little bit sooner than later because we pushed this one. And I think Anna and I were talking earlier that we should talk about 2021 and COVID and just like what we're doing to prepare possible scenarios that we could be facing so that it's not a surprise, communicating and talking through all of those points beforehand. It really pays off, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Is that a good topic for next month?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's
I love
like
it.
we took a break from it, but I think it's a good to kind of circle back, and especially ending out next year. Hopefully next year is going to be on the upswing.
Great.
Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly.
But
But
I
we don't
Getting
know.
some positivity and let's talk about how we can work forward. I think now we kind of know the kinks, and I think everybody's used to having to adjust and shift, pivot today. But I think it's an important conversation to kind of kick off end the year, but kick off the new year.
Exactly.
But also like
What have
to
we
hear
learned?
wedding trends too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like to hear about the trends, especially with COVID. Are people still trying to have the 300 plus wedding party, or are we doing more micro
We should bring
weddings?
Carla back for that conversation.
Yes.
We're inching up slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. Have a good plan and a good recap. What have we learned from the year?
Mhm.
Oh yeah, that'd be a good one.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Actually,
So
great.
cool.
So,
Well, thank you everyone for being here. I'm
Thank
so excited. It's really good. It's going to be
for
up.
having us.
You're so welcome. We're going to have this. It's live streaming to YouTube and Facebook right now, but then it also will stay up there. So feel free to point people to it on the Empower Events Tampa Bay Facebook page and the YouTube channel. This is some really good stuff in here. I almost want to send it to all my people as required watching. Exactly.
We'll post the YouTube link too, so people can really share if anybody wants to share with any other vendors or any even clients. So,
Yeah, and if you're interested or you know any other vendors that are interested in coming to talk on the next one, please feel free to reach out to me, Ashley Hammond. And thank you guys. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ash. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Welcome.
Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.